So I call the advisory committee meeting for March 24th, 2022 to order at 7:02 p.m. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. So I don't see anyone from the public on our meeting, so we're covered on that. Are there any, let's see, are there any comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda? Again, not seeing the public. So next we have review and approval of minutes from April 28th.
I did not. Is that true? Wait a minute. Sorry. Yes, I did not receive any comments. Oh, I did receive one comment on the transfer of funds. Daveling commented that on item 5 that we recommended the transfer, that it's actually town meeting that votes it.
Thanks, Daveline. Good catch.
Very good catch.
And anyone else have any feedback for Nancy on the minutes? Okay.
I move we approve the minutes of April 28th.
Second.
All right, we'll come to vote. We have Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Dave was absent. Evan's not here. Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Al's not here. Tina was not there. Matt was not there. Caitlin?
Aye.
Okay.
Andy, aye.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why. I didn't read your name on the sheet, and I have the sheet right in front of my face, Andy. Sorry. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8, Nancy. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Great. So now we get the chance to do some debrief on the year in review. So on the budget process, the warrant article review process, town meeting. If you have any thoughts about the future, any takeaways from the processes this year about what we could do differently next year, and also considering the budget issues we confronted this year, our discussion can definitely talk about next year if we'd like as well. So how were your liaison assignments? How did it go covering committees to which you were assigned? Did you get the budget information you felt you needed to help make your decisions? How did the warrant article process go? So anyway, it's pretty much open to what you want to talk about. I'd like to speak first for just a minute. I want to thank you all for your hard work this year. It was not a normal budget year, and the extra thought and energy and worry that went into the final budget preparation was very difficult. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you all for your efforts. Next year will be a different kind of difficult year. But after having really no good choices this year, at least you would have a choice, I think, for a revenue source next year. So let's think on the bright side about that. It will be a busy coming year with a special town meeting in the fall, to an override vote in the spring. And long-term, I do have concerns about the need for long-term capital planning, the larger size projects, not the capital outlay size projects. The town had some graduate students produce a report in the summer of 2020 on this topic, and I'd like to see more progress made on this type of planning. And we also have a master plan, which the town will need to start finding ways to implement. So those are just a couple comments that I have at the moment, and I will open it up to AdCom members if you want to raise your hand, if you want to speak about anything. Bob.
Thanks, Julie, and thank you for your leadership and appreciation to all of the colleagues on the AdCom this year. I think it's been an exceptional group that's worked exceptionally well. And I volunteered some of my comments about the future at our last meeting, so I won't repeat those. I do think the earliest look at the budget process next year is going to be extremely important because for the first time in a long while, I think the department heads and the school are basically going to have to come forward with an override budget in which they are identifying what jobs or services would not be funded in the event that an override does not pass. And certainly at the level of money we're talking about for next year, throw out as a ballpark, something like 6 million or more maybe as the ultimate override, especially as inflation kicks in and drives costs up. I think it's going to be very, very important for the town administrator's office to kind of take an early position on the kind of funds that would be made available in the event the override does not pass to the respective departments. Obviously, the school budget as the major part of the budget is going to be challenged with new personnel, new members of the school committee, a new business manager, and the earlier the school committee can present their budget, the better. And I guess I'll leave my comments there.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Daveline.
Yeah, I have sort of just I guess it's a practical question. I'm trying to figure out, it feels to me like although we're trying to review this past year with some look at the future, this doesn't feel like we're ending as a normal year either. And so I'm kind of curious to what extent we have an idea of the timing of the fall, particularly a special town meeting, thinking about the election being November 8th, which I assume that would also be the time whether we would approve the excluded debt for Foster and the public safety facility. And then the town meeting having to occur before that in time for the ballot to be printed. And so I'm just sort of, every time I talk to somebody, I had coffee the other day with Donna Smallwood, who sort of had an idea of a much earlier town meeting potentially than I had been thinking. And so I'm just trying to get a sense of that, because obviously before that special town meeting, there's going to be a lot of work that we do. So I'm just trying to, so I don't know if George or Julie, if you have some special insights into that. I realize that's not debriefing what we've done, but I'm kind of interested in looking at what we're going to be doing as well.
Well, it's definitely a fair question. And obviously the advisory committee will have to get going very quickly in the new year because of the work that's coming. So I don't know, George, you want to talk about this? Or I can talk about what we know so far, but since you'll be, should be the leader at that point, you can talk about the hitting the highlights of the upcoming dates. Or I
Yeah,
can do it.
no, it's a good question, Daveline, and we've bounced, Tom has bounced a couple of dates around, but at this point, we're looking at somewhere late October for the meeting, but, before, I would maybe write that in pencil.
Yeah.
Because, it hasn't all been flushed out completely, and there are issues with state balance and federal balance and timelines and that sort of thing. So, early on, there was some talk about doing it in late September, then early October, and now it's looking more like later in October. So, but stay tuned for further updates.
I wasn't looking for a commitment because I realize that's.
And yes, the ballot questions would be on funding Foster and public safety building and setting aside some funds to help the taxpayers through those first 3 years of the bonding. And also, somewhat of an unknown, but there certainly could be a citizen's petition for, I don't know, a tree bank or something else that might come up. So, but at this point, there's certainly nothing that's been circulated or socialized. So, but yes, we will have a busy summer and fall. So.
And I'll add that, George and I meet weekly with the town administrator team, and Nancy has joined in those meetings recently as well. And so top questions that we have each week are, okay, so what's the plan for preparing for the override? Let's get started sooner than later. Who's the group that's going to work on that, and when? Please start now. So we that's a top question. And the other one is, of course, talking about preparation for special town meeting and making sure that advisory committee would have the articles in hand with plenty of time to work on those articles before town meeting. And hopefully there are any extra articles slipped in by any petitions, but you just never know. And so anyway, the town administrator team is working on that right now, of trying to figure all that out. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to speak about the year in review? Any feedback, any concerns, I don't know. It's pretty much wide open for you to discuss.
Hey, Julie. Oh, sorry, George, go for it.
Tried to find my hand, Dave. So no, I just wanted to, well, first of all, thank Sue Nickerson, who's sitting passively over there, for once again, being a tremendous resource for all of us with questions, budget questions, town questions, anything you can think of. It always seems as though Sue is a good person to go to, and will come up with an answer, or at least direct us in the right direction. The other thing that I would echo Bob's comments, and I know Nancy and I had a little bit of a conversation the other day in which we talked about, it is going to be, the budget season in particular is going to be very, very hectic, shall we say. So the sooner that we are able to get the information, the better. And I know this is particularly challenging for the schools with the strategic plan, the staff audit, all the new people. But if there's some way, and I do plan to talk to Michelle about trying to accelerate the timing for the school budget so that we can get a good look at it and begin to dig into it. The sooner we can do that, certainly the better off we're all going to be. So timing is never a luxury, or it has never been a luxury in my 5 years on AdCom. And Next year, it seems like it's going to be even more important that we try to get the information and get get our questions out and get our questions quickly answered and responded to from both the school sides and the municipal sides. And I know that's generally not an issue on the municipal side. Getting information from the schools has been a little bit challenging at times, but we will need to get the information, and no question about it. So that's all I have.
George, did you want to talk, Dave?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that I think for my money, and I won't step on the punchline for my liaison report, but the school committee, I'll just say this out loud because I think it's a conclusion I would say to anyone if they were here, is that I'm concerned that they don't have a good understanding of our budget process and how we go about things. And so I say that not as a criticism necessarily, because I think that they have plenty of things to do, and it's not because they're all at the snug. There's a lot going on, and the budget is but one of the things that they worry about. But I would say that in this coming years, I don't have to tell anybody on this Zoom, the budget is really the most important thing for them to worry about, maybe after onboarding a new superintendent. But so I would just, it's easy for me to say as I ride into the sunset, but whatever can be done to try to get the school committee or a subset of the school committee or, to understand that this has got to be a collaborative effort. And we are not going to be the reason that an override fails, and we're not going to be the reason that an override succeeds. We are a facilitator to the issues that the override will put before the town. And so I wish I had an answer. I've literally spent the last 5 years trying to come up with that pathway for sharing information in a way that's useful. And I guess what I worry about, which I'll just leave as kind of an editorial comment, is that I think as the school committee meetings go into the fall and start talking about the override and the budget, I think that they need to be very thoughtful about how they manage expectations of the parents and their constituency. And I in the past, I've been frustrated by the fact that I don't think they've managed the expectations of their parents particularly well, even this year, where I think, I think ultimately we somehow take the blame for the budget that the town passes that didn't include anything that they wanted. And yet, spoiler alert, they're going to fund everything that they wanted anyhow, because they have the money in the budget, and we didn't need to give them the extra $850. We, the town, didn't need to give them this extra $850. So, I look at something like that, and yet we had a meeting last night with the school committee. Sorry, I'm really going crazy here. This is what happens when you get near the end. You don't brush your hair, you don't get dressed, and you start going to town on the school committee. We had a meeting last night where there was no acknowledgement of the fact. I had to ask about how this $850 was found, when before it was $360, and before that it was $0, and now there's $850,000 to fund these positions. And me, little old me, not the school committee, not anybody else, is asking that question. And nor was the flip side stated, which I almost stated, but I resisted, which was to say, oh, so we could have done this all along with it, not adding the $850 and not having that big to do. And so that kind of expectation management, I think that's actually an important message for the community to hear, which is that, look, we found a way. It's kind of what we've been asking the school committee to do for years. It's like, look hard at what you got first before you come and say, can I have some more? And here they did, and God bless them, they found it. And that's the objective, right? I mean, within reason, if you can make it happen. And certainly this was a year within reason. So again, side detour, long way off, but just a way of saying, I think we can only do what we can do. And George, I don't say this to really make you just leave meeting and run away into the Appalachian Trail again, because it's going to take a collaborative effort. And I will say this in 100% confidence, which is that this group of people, are fair and thoughtful and reasonable, and you're after the best interests of the town, and you always will be, and we always will be. And I just want to make sure everybody keeps that in mind and recognizes that we've got to all pull in the same direction, and anything we can do along the way to try to help make whatever outcome is the right outcome for the town more successful, let's do it. But I just, there's work to do. And I think that the Sustainable Budget Task Force, to the extent that it can keep going, is a step in that direction. I hope that Dr. Adams will be able to attend that and everything else that she's got going on, but I'm sure she's going to be a very busy new superintendent. But, you know, I guess there's always a question from the school committee I see to hear that there's not enough communication across the town. And I'm not sure I ever understood exactly where that comes from. And maybe that's just because of where I sit. But I think that, you know, overdoing the communication in this next year in particular could save us some time, because George, I think, as you properly point out, we don't have a lot of time. And oh, by the way, in a year in which we're going to have one of the heavier budget lifts, we've also got to, you know, raise $100 million for capital through a separate town meeting. So, yeah, anyhow, sorry. That's my thought for the moment.
Don't say sorry. That was really good, Dave. Thank you. Nancy?
Thanks, Julie. And in the spirit of thanking everybody, I'd like to thank our 5 outgoing members, but in particular, Julie and Bob and Dave have been here for a long haul and have been real mentors, I think, to the rest of us. So I'd like to really applaud you guys and tell you how much we're going to miss you. I have but I do have a question. And Dave, I don't know if you have insight into this, but the strategic plan and I'm forgetting the official name for it. I keep referring to it as the position audit, but I think it has a better name than that. That's being done by the school committee right now. Are we going to see those in real time, or are we going to see a filtered version through the school committee?
I saw Liza at a tennis match tonight, and she said that the strategic plan will be presented to the school committee on June 6th. So it's imminent, which is great.
In a public meeting, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
And I think that's, she didn't offer me a sneak peek, nor did she say it was done. So I imagine they're going to work up until June 6th to get it done. But I would encourage anybody who wants to see it. And so it'll be presented, I think, at the 6th, and I imagine that it'll show up in some written form on the website.
And what about the staffing audit? Oh,
I did not ask about that. That's a good question. But given that that was Dr. Maestas's impetus, I would hope that it also has a soon, you know, an availability date within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
We can be sure to follow up with the school folks if we don't hear any talk in the next couple of weeks about that staffing audit. So we can keep asking about that. Tina.
Thanks, Julie. And I echo all Nancy's comments about thank you so much to everyone who's done so much this year. But I won't go on and on about that. I am going to definitely get off Facebook, because following on your unload, Dave, and I'm new, so I should do this, but I was not happy to see a long post about the school budget, and don't use the word surplus, use the word variance. And there is no surplus, there is just a variance. And those are the kinds of things that make me nervous. But I went down a rabbit hole and was reading the Sustainable Budget Task Force presentation again, and really looking hard at the override information. And it's historically unprecedented. A friend of mine mentioned this to me, and I wanted to look it up and reread it, but it's unprecedented for Hingham to pass a debt exclusion that includes both municipal and school asks. We've, as far as I can tell, we've only passed debt exclusions like since the 90s for the schools. So I agree that the collaborative effort that's going to be required between the school and the municipal side, and working together, really understanding the goal and really understanding how we're working together and trying to get there is going to be critical for us to pass this. And it just is going to be something really new, I think, for us to create and do.
Thanks, Tina. I do remember in 2009, there were funds in the override for, I think it was for the fire department. There were a couple of other departments that were non-school, that were municipal as part of that package,
Okay.
of that override, but it wasn't, you know, a big one, but I think that there were
Okay, good.
non-school, yeah. So we have next Andy.
Thank you, and thank you to our departing soldiers. We will miss you all and your wisdom. I have a proposed job for you. One of the things that concerns me is the somewhat adversarial nature of the relationship between us and the school committee over the budget. And I recognize that there is necessarily always some tension between those who ask for money and those who are gatekeepers. But the problem that concerns me is what's twofold. One, someone mentioned earlier that I guess it was Dave who talked about, we don't really know how the school committee puts together its budget, and they don't seem to know how we examine the budgets of the municipal departments. And it would be helpful if somehow we could bridge the gap so that the school committee budget is more transparent to us, and that I, for one, have some sense of confidence that the budget was built in some kind of meaningful, thoughtful manner. As you all recall, the documents the school department gives us is a spreadsheet that shows the last 6 or 7 year budgets, and then they're at the far column to the right, their proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year, and I've never seen that done like that before. And this year, for the third year in a row, I had to request that they fill in between the budget columns the actual expenditure numbers for the different line items. Typically, people build budgets by looking not just at the previous year's budget, but more importantly, on the previous year's expenditures. Now, the first year that I asked for that, I had asked for it 3 times, and then each year thereafter, I've had to ask for it, which of course gives me no confidence as to the thoughtfulness with which the budget is put together. And in the sense of by thoughtfulness, I mean the budget is sort of built from the ground up on a needs basis rather than from the top down on how much can we get in this item. It also is not immediately apparent to me that though state law does not require the school department to necessarily adhere to the line item budget they give us, that they ought to adhere to that, and we should be confident that they do adhere to it. It undermines confidence, certainly my confidence in the system, when I look at a budget and I have no sense that that's really where the money is going to go. And I just sort of as a matter of institutional integrity, that should be a policy. It seems to me that the school committee adopts for its own. That the job I would like to see, now that we're going to have a new superintendent, a new business manager, and we have what, two new school committee members, right? This would be a very good time for knowledgeable advisory committee members or former members to sit down perhaps with the new leadership of the school department and the school committee and talk about budget formulation and what our needs are and what the town's needs and expectations are. And maybe using the good offices of the Sustainable Budget Task Force to help in that process. It is, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but distressing is one thing. You know, I feel so bad when some department head comes before us sort of trembling in his or her boots presenting a budget, and we have to drill them on to explain why a particular expense item is $750 more this year than last year. And yet nothing like that, to my knowledge, happens on the school side. In a year when the budget deficit is being driven mostly by the school's budget, it's ever more important to me that there be more collaboration between the town and the school committee in putting together the school department's budget. I don't know the history of any of those relationships, so I don't know if there are any particular reasons why there seems to be so little communication between the municipal side and the school side until all of a sudden the budget is presented. So that's my my request, that some of the expertise of our departing friends and some of the Sustainable Budget Task Force folks perhaps can work with the school committee to help with the budget process, make it much more transparent. Before I leave the subject entirely, and this, I hope I'm not anticipating your liaison report, Dave, but where did the $850,000 come from?
You are anticipating it. I asked that very.
I'll
Well, it's
withdraw
okay
the
though.
question.
Okay, I'll come to it just so we stay on
Okay.
agenda, but I'll get to it, Andy. Don't worry.
Thank you.
You won't be happy with my answer, but I'll get to it.
I think that's all I have for the moment. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Andy. Well, it's decided Bob's gonna have to run for school committee. I think that's what the answer. Work really firsthand. No, I'm just kidding. Interesting points, Andy. I'm not sure how the old departing AdCom members could really get in there to talk about budgeting, but anyway, it's something to think about for sure. Brenda?
Thank you. Julie, George, thank you for shepherding us through this rather tumultuous year. So appreciate all your efforts, and Nancy for tracking our conversations over these meetings. So thank you so much. And to all those people who I feel like I've learned so much from this year, I thank you. I feel, Dave, like I kind of want to grab one last piece of your thinking about something with regards to the school system, because to increase communication, it seems like there needs to be some format that is designed to create that. I know, at least as I understand the role of liaison on the departments and committees that I'm a liaison to, you're mostly listening, asking questions, but not really sort of offering input per se. And I know that the education subcommittee is its own subcommittee, and I don't happen to know the format of whether you meet together as a group with the school committee or whether you are attending school committee meetings and then discussing later. But if we are going to increase communication, if we're going to try to really make this a collaborative process this year, should a new format be created, a sort of joint budgeting preparation group that is designed to talk to each other back and forth about what's happening on the municipal side, what's happening on the school side, where you're not struggling with open meeting laws and things like that, because you're designed to be having these conversations on a regular basis. Would that be helpful?
Well, yeah, just quickly, I think it's a great question, Brenda. I really do. And I do think that's the challenge. I mean, when you peel it all back, to put myself in the school committee shoes for a second, they're not told at any point in the year until the very end, the last page of the book, how much they have to spend. And so their working assumption is we're going to build a budget that is what we need. And then we're going to ask for that. And then we're going to keep it, within the 4 to 5% range, because that's historically what we've gotten, and so on and so forth. And so, your question is right on. And I will just confess, at least in my years on ACES, because none of us really know exactly what we're working with, we can only give kind of a traditional party line, which is, keep it as little as possible because it's tight. And this year we said it a little bit more explicitly in it. And in their defense, they think they came to us with something that was much more skinny than traditionally. Now, I don't see it exactly the way they do in that regard. But as hard as I've tried to convince them otherwise, they haven't seen my way of thinking. So we agree to disagree. But I think, they would say, if they were on this call, we did try very hard to keep it small, and there you have it. So your point's really well taken. And I guess what I worry about is that, worry is too strong a word, but I think you've highlighted the challenge, which is that if it's going to be if their objective is to maximize the resources for the school, which one would argue, or they, I think, would all argue that's what they were elected to do. Maybe they wouldn't. We should ask them. Someone should ask them when they're running for office. But that's, assuming they go in there with that mindset, then your point is well taken. However, the conversation in a normal year, I haven't found a way to have that conversation in a way that has any teeth other than kind of generalities back and forth. I think your point about this year is spot on. And I think George and Julie would agree. I don't want to speak for them, but I think the question about, like, when do we start having a conversation about what does this budget look like? How much do people have to work with? It's not okay to just say, like, tell us everything you want and we'll roll that into the override. I don't think. Now, that's my view, and that may be people's view on this call. It may not be the school committee's view. There may be school committee members who say, well, if we have an override, this is the time. Let's dump the truck and take everything we can get. And is that a wrong approach? I don't know if it's wrong. Is it realistic? I don't know. But, so I think you're spot on. I think this is a year when, and it's kind of, you said it better than I did, kind of a year in which it would be nice to try to find that framework wherein those who have the view of their own budgets are all in this, and I would include all the municipal folks too, so they all hear each other's challenges and risks and struggles, so that they know that no one's picking sides and so forth. Because I love that idea. So I don't want to paint George into a corner, but I do think that if there ever was a year to try to get people together early to talk about the realities of what we're facing in the spring, I think this is the one.
And maybe preparing for an override committee, so that if this is going to be an override that's going to bring in money for all the departments should be talking together about the strategy to be used and how much money is going to be looked for. But anyway,
right.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I know the town administrator is working on planning for what an override team who would be in that. And to work, starting sooner than later. So it would be, obviously, the group would include people from the municipal side, the school side, advisory committee, town council. So that's kind of planning is being thought about right now. So, Caitlin?
Thanks, Julie. Andy kind of covered my point a little bit. I struggled with it on the municipal side and looking at the budgets and the information we get. There's, we're comparing to last year's budget instead of seeing like, okay, what's the current forecast or what are the actuals to date? And I don't know, Sue, if that's something that is easily like available, but I think it would be helpful as you're trying to assess a department's proposed budget to have something, more kind of current than what the last year budget was. So I just kind of echoing what Andy said on the school department side, I did struggle with not having that information in the reports from the municipal side. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Daylene?
Yeah, I was just curious, thinking about Brenda and Dave's conversation, what it called to mind. I understand the Sustainable Budget Task Force is actually continuing to meet.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that might be a facilitating place for some of these conversations, because that does include people from different parts of the budgeting process. And so it just an idea. I don't know if that would work or not, but since it's a group in place, and maybe it could be, I know we have liaisons to it, maybe it could be expanded, whatever. But I think the conversations are important. So, and I'll also, since I didn't say it before, I appreciate both Julie and George's leadership this year, because this has not been an easy year. So thank you for keeping us on track. And I also will just thank, as somebody who's just been in quarantine, I appreciate you keeping us on Zoom too. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Daylene. Kristen?
I'm just first going off of what Daylene was just talking about with the Sustainable Budget Task Force, that it is continuing, and some of us were liaisons on that, but historically we were there to more so listen than participate in that those conversations. So I don't know if that's going to be the goal for this year too. As people have just said, maybe that is the place to bring up some of this stuff, but historically that wasn't the goal of us in those meetings. So just something to think about for George maybe. And I don't know what that is going forward this year as those start up again. Also going back to something that, Andy was talking about with the school side, to think about not only do we not have transparency into their revenues and expenses, but these revolving funds. I think that came out later in the year, which was very surprising to a lot of us, seeing that there was a lot of money sitting there that could be used for other things that we didn't know about. I think there needs to be a lot of transparency and on those things too. So the public is also aware of that. Like Dave said, I think that we look like the bad guys a lot of times when we say no, because we find out that there's money sitting somewhere that no one knew about. So I think it just, goes back to, again, the transparency with the school and understanding their budgets and not just asking again for money that they might not need. So.
Thank you. Andy?
Was it Caitlin who talked about the municipal budget? My complaint about not seeing expenses doesn't go to the municipal budgets, because they in fact do give us in their spreadsheets reports on last year's expenses.
It was
So
the budget. It's the budget though. Am I
no, not just the
mistaken there? Let me know, but
that they provide the last year, they provide the previous year's budget, and then they provide a column of the expenses, the line item by line item of what they spent on those items the previous year. That's not something the school department gives us without asking. So we know what the municipal department spent each year. And of course, they get hell. I mean, well, they cannot move money from one line item to another without coming to us, I believe. Isn't that right, Sue? Yeah.
Yes,
So-
they have to go to the
so-
select board and advisory.
Yeah, so we have a good handle on the money on the municipal side that I'm just wishing we could get on the school side. That's,
Yeah, I hear that, Andy. I definitely don't think they're comparable. I think, right, because you're right, it was last year's or this current year budget and then the prior year actuals. But I think by the time we get to like the January time period, that's almost like half a year in. And I guess I'm just used to understanding where a department is to date in terms of figuring out like next year's and where, and I know at the end of the day, the give backs are small, but it's still kind of like, potentially understanding where there is a give back and where there's an annual give back. And again, I know I can go back and look at give backs. It's just more of like, when you're looking at the report, if there was a way to have, either like a year-to-date actual or a forecast. I mean, maybe it's not applicable to municipal budgets, but it just makes it easier to compare and to find areas where you could potentially pressure test. Is that the right dollar amount? I totally understand what you're saying. It's a different ballgame, but.
no, I get your point. I get your point now. I missed it before, so I'm sorry. And certainly a year-to-date number would be, I mean, that's always helpful. But
There actually is the year to date. It's just that when I run the reports, it's like in September or October. So there's only 3 months. To get that into the budget reports, Caitlin, we would have to rerun those reports whenever you wanted, which actually we can do. I mean, when we get to the budget season, the actual, nitty gritty, all you have to do is ask. I can run those reports at any point in time.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
And if the school department used Munis instead of Excel, they'd have the same reports as we do. Just saying.
Thank you, Sue.
now there's a suggestion that the Sustainable Budget Task Force might wish to pass on. They might be, at every other organization that you belong to at regular meetings, you get a treasurer's report that tells you where you are compared to budget, year-to-date figures. And I gather that the school committee does not get that. Is that right?
Well, they can run reports. I mean, they're on Munis, so they can run reports anytime they want. Like on the municipal side, we have quarterly budget reviews. And that's exactly what we do with every department.
Mhm.
Compare their budget with their actual, and if they're over on any quarter, they have to tell me why.
At a recent school committee meeting that was discussed, Andy, where they want to get reports from the business manager on a more frequent basis. So look, that will be something different in the coming year. That should help. Anyone else have anything they want to give for feedback or discuss? How do you feel about town meeting? I'm feeling pretty good about it because we didn't have.
You were a rock
trouble.
star.
Well, I mean, we were all holding our breath collectively when the budget came up, and you just never know. And the questions that came up for warrant articles, nothing really too strange or out of the ordinary. So I guess there's not a lot to talk about that. Tina?
The one thing I would say is the town meeting went so well. It was such a pleasure, and I was holding my breath through the budget particularly, but I think we were so open. We talked about so much. Julie, you did such a great job facilitating people feeling welcome to come and express their thoughts and opinions. And after it was over, and no one, I imagined so many things happening. I thought, wow, I think people really felt like they had the opportunity to be heard beforehand and got a lot of the information that they needed. So I think you did a great job with that.
Thank you. Yeah, well, hopefully I did see a lot of people coming and going on the field on that day. And I have given my feedback to the town administrator team that, to the extent that the world is a healthier place to be indoors this fall, I used to be a big fan of the idea of Saturday town meeting, or, sort of being outside was a novelty, and a safe choice. But I really feel like I've changed my opinion about going back inside, or at least doing it on a weeknight. I feel like maybe on a weeknight, it's more of like a business meeting where you come, you do your votes, you stay, you get the work done, and then you leave. But I feel like I just watching people coming and going and coming and going, it just seemed like an open house. So I don't know, that's just sort of my thoughts about that day. And I know anecdotally so many people who missed that day because they had graduations, weddings, their kids' sports events, really large sports events that were well out of town. So anyway, that's sort of my change thinking about town meeting. But we'll see. I know that the town, for the special town meeting in the fall, that is, and in choosing the date, that is sort of part of the decision-making process that the town administrator team is and talking to the select board about, what to do about whether it should be on the weekend again, or should it go back to being a weeknight. And they are just talking about getting feedback from voters in the town about what they want going forward. And hopefully a lot of people would participate in that kind of polling and give their feedback, because you want as many people as possible to turn out for these town meetings. And I just feel like this year, I don't know. Anyone have anything else they want to talk about? I get off my soapbox about town meeting day and time. Okay. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is liaison updates. And I left that pretty open so that I know we have a school update from Dave. He can give us the full update, and then let me know if anybody else wants to give an update. You can go ahead, Dave.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit earlier. We did seat the 2 new and 1 returning board member last night, which is great. Michelle Ayer was elected chair. Ness Carenti was elected vice chair, and then Jen Benham was elected treasurer. So that is the new leadership going into the coming school year. So Michelle, for
Did you
those
mean
who aren't-
secretary? Did you mean secretary?
Sorry, what did I say?
Not treasurer? Treasurer.
Oh, I did mean
That was
secretary.
there's a subconscious slip talking about.
Yes, the time has come. Exactly. I really got to go. Yeah. So for those who don't know Michelle is I think in her 6th year, rising into her 6th year this fall of school committee participation, and a former chair of the school committee, I think a couple of years ago, and a good, reasonable, thoughtful person. So I think the leadership is good for what we have before us. So that makes me feel good. As I mentioned, I guess it was partly my fault because the agenda item last night was a 2022 budget update from John Ferris, but I ignored that and asked about the 2023 budget because John had made the comment during his 2022 budget comments that all the positions for the 23 budget that they wanted were going to be funded. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Last I had heard, there was $360,000 against the 850 that had been that had appeared, and I don't say that with a negative connotation, but because of retirements of teachers at a higher salary than the individuals who will replace them and a couple other adjustments, there was money found that was unallocated in the 23 budget as a result that they could apply to new positions because it was salary money anyhow in the budget, which was all fine. But when I asked John last night, Andy, your question, which is the right question, which is, oh, that's great news. Where'd the other $500,000 come from? And John said that there were some more retirements. And I said, wow, that's a lot of retirements. And he said, well, no, it's not all retirements. And then he got a little unclear. So I didn't press because I guess officially it wasn't on the agenda, but suffice it to say, I guess the good news is that they anticipate getting all of the new positions funded. And just to refresh people's memory, again, it never has been suggested these positions aren't necessary. One is the fine arts director for the high school, a long sought after position from certainly from members of the community who have students in the arts. There were 4 proposed adjustment counselors that would be new positions at each of the elementary schools, which I think, given the history of COVID and I think the demonstrable or demonstrated uptick in certain social and emotional issues particularly for the elementary kids, that was the intent of those 4 positions. And then the balance of the positions were related to central office functions. Payroll was one, and maybe 1 or 2 other items that I don't recall. Well, I think one was a data analyst, et cetera. And so again, I don't think there's certainly none of the positions appeared from our vantage point, or my vantage point, I should say, to be frivolous by any means. I think they're useful positions that will help move the district forward. So that is where they stand. I think as it relates to the 23 budget, as I mentioned earlier, the strategic plan will be rolled out on June 6th. I have no idea what that holds. It'll be unveiled on the 6th and we'll see what happens. The good news is, just as an aside, when I was talking to Liza O'Reilly, who's now a former school committee member, about Dr. Adams, she said that Dr. Adams has been very, very engaged thus far. I think there was some money in the budget for them to give her, to get her started a little bit early, and she's done so with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and has attended some of the strategic planning sessions and has attended, I think she's been to every school already. And so I think that's all good. And Liza's always seemed very enthusiastic about Dr. Adams' engagement and ideas, and just desire to hit the ground running, which is great. So that was good news. I think that's probably it.
Thanks, Dave. Andy, do you have a question for Dave?
How is it that they can spend this year's money for next year's teachers, or other, I don't mean teachers, for next year's positions?
I probably misspoke or wasn't clear. Think of it this way. Let's assume, for the argument's sake, we have 10 positions that are budgeted at their current salary for the 23 budget. Those 10 individuals retire. They're getting paid each $1 a year. They're getting replaced by younger individuals who get paid 50 cents a year. The delta between the $23 budget and the 50 cents that's going to pay for their replacement is what's being reallocated to new positions, if you will. So functionally, the salary line item is unchanged for FY23, as I understand it. And what you're doing is basically reallocating the salary dollar across a less expensive newer employee in one capacity, and then potentially a new employee in another one. Now, you and I can, talk for hours over beers about what the ultimate impact of that is on the budget. That's a separate conversation, but that's what's happening. So it's not a moving of money between years. It's a reallocation of what's budgeted for 23.
So they're not suggesting that they have a surplus from the current fiscal year, but rather they are just playing is a bad word, that they are adjusting, as you say, some line items in the proposed budget for next year.
Yes, I would say that fairly they are reallocating, in this case, salary dollars in the 23 budget away from positions that resigned that were more expensive towards new positions and potentially, working it. Now, having said that, I didn't get a detailed breakdown. It wasn't on the agenda. I could ask. I don't know. They may have already put my email into the spam filter at the school committee. But I guess to your point though, Andy, just one thing I forgot to mention. As it stood last night in John Ferris's FY22 budget update, so the budget that's going to end in 5 weeks, he did say that the current projection for the surplus variance, whatever we want to call it, was $170,000. So that's down materially from the 1.7 million that was, discussed months ago, and as I think we all expected, right? I mean, and again, I don't think that's anything particularly unusual. It got a little bit more oxygen and airtime than maybe it does in a typical year. But again, when they discussed it and when I've discussed that kind of thing with John in the past, it's all, they've been spending money on things that have, teachers are busy. They spend when they, anyhow, in other words, I'm not suggesting that there's anything inappropriate with that variance coming down. I think that's, as we've said before, if they're budgeted that amount, if they can spend it on things that are in furtherance of the students, that's their job. So that's what's happening.
And John said that he always feels that he doesn't have enough money to spend on maintenance and those items. So
yeah, and some of that is exactly. It's a great point. Most of it was capital. They replaced a sound barrier wall, I guess, between the high school. I mean, this is true. I mean, John Ferris has got a great mind for a lot of this stuff. And there was a sound barrier around an air handler on the roof of the high school, which is there to help the neighbors, which has been way overdue for replacement. And that's one of the things that John used the money for. So, this is the kind of stuff he's doing. Is he's got a checklist that's probably longer than both arms of things that if he finds some capital dollars that he can spend, he will spend. And so I give him credit for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Good question.
Evelyn, do you have a question for Dave, or do you have your own?
No, I have a question for Dave. I just wondered, have they replaced John Ferris? I know he's retiring. Is there any discussion of that? And who
Yes,
might be replacing him?
Yes, a woman has been hired. Her first name is Aisha. I think I would mispronounce her last name if I remembered it. She, as I understand it, Opong, Aisha Opong, and she worked in the district before and is returning to the district. So again, I only know this just based on what I heard in the meeting last night. I wasn't involved in the hiring process, but that she will overlap. She will start, I think, in the middle of June and have a 2-week overlap with John. And then my sense is, from what I've heard in previous meetings, is that the school committee may retain John on some basis for the next few weeks to get Aisha up to speed and help with that transition. And at least in my experience, John has shown himself to be nothing if not trying to be helpful on these things. So I expect that will be as smooth as it can be. I don't know a great deal about the process that resulted in her hiring, but I certainly, the school committee was happy about how it turned out.
Thank you.
So didn't she used to work in your office?
No, she was actually John's assistant.
Oh,
She was
okay.
the assistant business director, or whatever John's title is. She worked there as the assistant.
Okay. Sorry, for some reason I thought she was in town hall for a while.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
No
Do
problem.
any other team leaders have any liaison updates for the committees that they cover? Brenda.
Just a quick reminder that the Climate Action Planning Committee has a survey coming out with your light bill in June and/or available online come June. Please fill it out and please ask any friends and neighbors to contribute their input. They're really looking to see what areas the town is interested in seeing the climate action plan cover and what information people have and don't have about what goes into a climate action plan to direct their education. So
Great. Thank you for the reminder. Dave?
Can I just quickly say a word about the pool?
Oh, yeah.
So the pool had its first hearing before the planning board last night and made a very comprehensive presentation about the structure. And for those, well, I don't have to tell Andy and those folks who have liaisons to the planning board, but those who've never been to a planning board meeting, it's worth attending to appreciate the level of detail and analysis that the planning board undertakes in some of these special permits. And so it was probably a 30 to 45 minute presentation. The abutters were in attendance, folks that we're familiar with from our meetings. A number of them had sent letters in advance to the planning board with their concerns. I haven't reviewed the letters. I don't think I will review the letters, but I think it's safe to say that the planning board was very open to hearing the abutters' concerns. They were able to express their concerns. They did so politely and thoughtfully, and I think they were well reasoned. And so the planning board has continued the hearing until their next meeting in June. And in continuing the hearing, I think there are a lot of timelines that are mandatory in certain processes with the planning board, and I may not be absolutely right, but functionally, by continuing this meeting to June, it gives them until July to make a determination on the special permit request or whatever things are before them with respect to this request. And that, as I understand from Christine, that's adequate to keep things on track to try to get this swimmable by next summer. So we'll see. And I think there is a parallel effort. Well, actually, no, I think we heard last night that the Conservation Commission, did I understand that, Julie? Were you there? That the Conservation Commission does not have jurisdiction over one of the questions related to this vernal pool?
I thought that they were going to have some kind of discussion about the vernal pool.
They were?
Or somebody
Okay,
from
well,
there.
suffice it to say that, the concerns around the abutters related to sound, they related to visual impact, they're related to parking, they related to this vernal pool, which I guess has some, just from an environmental question. And so, again, the planning board is nothing if not thorough in its analysis. But anybody who's interested, follow the agenda for the June planning board meeting and you'll get to hear the latest update. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so now we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the election of advisory committee officers. So this is an annual task, and I first will accept nominations for the advisory committee chair.
Julie, it would be my distinct privilege and high honor to nominate a person of proven leadership, 5 years of dedication, hard work, and thorough knowledge of the advisory committee, namely our vice chair, George Dennis, as the next chair of the advisory committee.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Third.
All right. So we will come to a vote for chair. Bob.
I think you need to ask if there are any other nominations.
Are there any other nominations?
I move we close the nominations.
Second.
Okay, so now we get to vote on George as chair. Bob,
Aye.
George, Nancy,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Dave Moline,
Aye.
Brenda,
aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Okay, great. We have a new chair.
Congratulations.
George.
Way to go, George.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Did I-
George.
I am
Did I miss?
humbled.
I had 12-0, but now should it be 13-0?
No.
9, 10, 11. I have 12.
12-0, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so next I will accept nominations for the advisory committee vice chair.
It would be my distinct pleasure and honor to nominate Nancy to be the vice chair for next year.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, so then we come to vote on Nancy McDonald as vice chair. Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Evan's not here. Andy,
Aye.
Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Okay, so that's 12. Congratulations, Madam Vice Chair. And finally, I will accept nominations for the advisory committee secretary.
And it would be my distinct pleasure to nominate one of the smartest people I know and who has the pulse of the town better than anyone I know, and that is Tina Sherwood.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? If not, we come to vote on Tina Sherwood as advisory committee secretary. Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
All right, we have 12-0. Congratulations, Tina. Thank you. And thank you all to our new slate of officers for next year. I really appreciate your stepping up for this kind of service, and it'll be a fun, wild ride, but it was totally worth doing it. So I'm sure you'll feel the same way. I hope you do. So thank you. And the committee is in terrific hands next year. So next up, I have the discussion of advisory committee housekeeping items. So someone earlier in the meeting alluded to this, but we are losing 5 members this year. So we will have 5 new members next year. And that is Bob, Dave, myself, and we're losing Evan and also Matt. So I wanted to just let everybody know for sure. And we're very sorry to lose Matt and lose Evan. And then, well, Bob, Dave, and I, whatever, we have to go. But anyway, so I just wanted Matt's here, so we're going to put him on the hot seat. Well, we have another meeting, but we wanted to say thank you and we will miss you. You can chime in if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks for having me on for the last year. I think when I stepped in last summer, I thought it was the end of a kind of 3-year term. So it was a 1-year commitment. And then I took a new role inside Fidelity Investments in October that just requires heavy travel, typically meeting with clients at night, and just not able to commit to the time, and felt like it was in the best interest of the town, this committee, to kind of step down if I couldn't actually be there participating in the meetings. But it was really great to work with you all, and I'm not going very far. So not leaving the town.
Good. Well, maybe AdCom can get you back in the future. You know, there's always that option if you're not going anywhere. So, but totally understandable. So we will have 5 openings that the moderator is working feverishly to find people to fill the spots. But please, if you have anyone in mind, start racking your brain for good people that you can recommend, who you can ask them to fill out a talent bank application. That'd be great.
If they've ever done an override, that would be a big plus.
Yeah, because there's so many of those people floating around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Somebody who's really quick on the uptake. How's that? Can learn the job quickly.
You mean like Kathy Curley?
Yeah, that's right. Bob will get PTSD for having somebody at AdCom talk in his house for 6 more
I'll tell her you
years.
said that.
No, don't you dare.
Well, Andy, we could get Andy Straley and Deirdre Anderson. I mean, there's a couple of names that
Yeah.
we could bounce those folks around.
Now you're
One very knowledgeable about the town and one a lawyer. So, I mean, how can you go wrong?
That's
Oh,
it.
Gosh. Then I'll have PTSD. Thanks a lot, Andy. I'm just kidding.
I know, I lost my connection there for a second. I didn't hear them.
Just as well, Dave.
So when you're out and about walking around town, if you're on the commuter boat or the train, start stalking people, we're really, really need some good people. But anyway, I'm sure they'll find the 5 people that will be up for the task. So,
But we'll never replace the people we are losing. I mean, that's a given, right?
Right.
Goes without saying, Andy.
Well, I felt someone had to say it, notwithstanding that, Dave.
I'll pay you later, that's right.
I'm the disciple of the obvious, so.
thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple of upcoming dates that I want you all to just remember. First, fun Saturday, June 11th is the advisory committee party from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Hingham Heritage Museum. I don't know if our party planner crew have any updates or anything they want to say right now, or.
I can give a quick update. So we sent the invitation to 95 different people. 45 have come back saying they're attending, 17 have said they can't make it, 31 have not yet replied. Although 45 is actually, with couples and plus ones, is probably closer to 90 individuals that will be attending. So I just would ask you, if you know people in town who got the email in their inbox, have now pushed it out a couple times, there's still 31 people who haven't replied. So maybe I might send that list around at some point to this group and say, if you know these people, can you see if they're going to make it or not? Because we still got a lot of outstanding invitations.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I also thought of another addition, one other person that I'll email you, Matt.
Okay.
I'll have to
And
include on the list.
Julie's been good about adding folks. So Allie Anderson, Matt Kosman, I believe, are both going to be there from school committee. But
good.
if there's other names we're missing, let me know.
Great. The other new name is the new business manager.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The superintendent, the new superintendent is invited. I'm not sure if she can attend or not, but it's just good to have the new.
And maybe the new Board of Health member. I forget, Rosemary Byrne.
Yeah, I'll check on that. Okay, thank you. Any other updates on the party?
I have 3 8th graders lined up to be our food servers. They work well on a budget. And they'll just be passing, some things, but I have 3 committed for that evening, and they will take it very seriously. And Caitlin and I have been talking about the food, and we have 2 possibilities for caterers, but one we think we've zeroed in on should be confirmed tomorrow. Given the size of the crowd is a little bigger than I think we even thought. So we'll have, I know you said nobody really eats, but maybe if there's passed by, some very polite 8th graders, maybe they'll eat.
That's true. So, well, thank you. And thanks for finding some good cheap help. I think it'll be fun to have them there. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully, I know we'll miss Dave. He will not be there at the party, and he's very sad about that. But
That's true. I have a family wedding that was twice COVID delayed, so it's finally going to happen this year, and we're all going come hell or high water. But so I will miss it. But
understood. Okay, so
I have a believe it or not, 55th college reunion that weekend, and my wife and I are in serious negotiations as to which we're going to be attending Saturday night. You know how when I went to Holy Cross, it was all men. So you know how much wives look forward to going to the unions of schools.
Send the missus to our party. She'll have more fun.
I think.
And we can tell her lots of tales.
Well, that happens at Holy Cross as well.
Yeah, ours
know,
would
it
be
turns
more
out-
recent.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And
It
more
turns out
appropriate.
I'm missing my college reunion that weekend too, but anyway, no one needs to see the old geezers, right, Andy? Just kidding.
You know, it's funny, when you look in the mirror every day, it doesn't look like you're getting older, but when you go to these reunions and you see your classmates, you say, my God, those people are old. It's really quite disconcerting. We
Wow,
don't
we look
age
forward
what our
to-
friends do.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to hold the date Wednesday, June 22nd. And it's in pencil, but we have been trying to schedule this joint meeting among the school committee, select board, personnel board, and advisory committee, where we would discuss an executive session strategy on collective bargaining for the upcoming school contract renewal, school personnel contract renewal negotiations. And I think that would be a good meeting where we could discuss all kinds of things about keeping an eye on the curve of the growth of the school budget and in general, the town budget. So anyway, if you can pencil in the 22nd, it's not set yet in stone, but we're hoping that that's the date. Andy?
Will the chair of the personnel board be at this meeting?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep, the personnel board. And so we're just getting the last people in place for that meeting. But anyway, pencil in June 22nd, please, and it would be by Zoom. Because
What's
it's
a
so many people and it's a Wednesday.
Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, our final meeting of this year is Tuesday, June 28th. We're going to do reserve fund transfers, and it may be on Zoom. We may try to do it in person. George and I are going to work on testing of the advisory committee room at Town Hall and the sort of new features that Town Hall is getting set up with, so that you can have in-person meetings, but have people connect remotely, but even an AdCom member perhaps who was out of town could remotely connect into the meeting and participate as well. So there's a new, what was the name of that machine that they're
Owl.
testing? The Owl. It's a new machine called the Owl. So anyway, we need to get in there and do some fiddling around with that. So, you know, there's a chance it would be in person, but the way things are going these days, maybe not. So anyway, but that will be on Tuesday, June 28th. Does anyone else have any other housekeeping matters or questions? Okay. And are there any matters not anticipated within 48 hours of meeting? Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Jabeline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Thank you, Julie, and hi.